journalism and later went on to Southern University Law School. He has worked as an assistant attorney general, and previously served as the executive producer of the Murphy, Sam, and Jody show for Clear Channel Radio. Chris Riles is from Calcasieu Parish and graduated from the East State in chemical engineering. He worked in ExxonMobil. He's worked at ExxonMobil since 1979 and has worked his way up all the way to his current position as venture manager for large capital projects. Thank you guys so much. Just so as a reminder, only members of the working media and members of Press Club can ask questions. Thank you so much.
Hi, thank you for having us. We're very proud to be here and happy to be a part of today's festivities. As you know, the St. George Incorporation effort began on March 2nd. What you're going to see from Chris Riles is a presentation and a slideshow. It's going to illustrate exactly why we started this effort and why we feel it's so important for St. George to incorporate. Chris Riles.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Today I'm pleased to speak on behalf of the committee for the City of St. George. This presentation will illustrate the harsh reality of the excessive and wasteful spending of the city-parish governance model and the resultant negative impact to its financial health assessment recently conducted by J.P. Morgan. And we will demonstrate the proposed City of St. George will deploy a proven 21st century governance model that has delivered best-in-class services to multiple municipalities and will be the catalyst and can be the catalyst for the revitalization of East Baton Rouge Parish. Edwards Deming is right. Without data, you're just another person with an opinion. The following 4 business principles are foundational in my presentation today. Number 1, understand your competition through benchmarking, using data and trends to discern opportunities to improve the quality and the cost of services. Number 2, develop gap closure plans to achieve best-in-class performance. Number 3, modify your organizational structure to achieve its goals and objectives. And 4, and most important, embrace change, as it is the only constant. I will share our analysis and conclusion of these 5 topics. First is the area public school district performance trends. Second, the city parish operating budget trends. Third, the city parish financial health assessment by J.P. Morgan. Fourth, the area population trends and forecast. And finally, the City of St. George and our 21st century governance model. Our focus has always been to improve the educational performance in public schools. In 2005, we highlighted these statistics, that there was a very large disparate performance in East Baton Rouge Parish school districts. What we saw was the Zachary School District was rated first in the state with all 6 of its schools rated as A. Central was rated second in the state with all 5 of its schools rated A or B. And we saw 43 out of 84, over 50% of the schools in East Baton Rouge Parish school system were rated as failing as rather a D or F scores. We were promised in 2015 that the East Baton Rouge Parish School District performance scores would improve. However, since 2014, the combined EBR Parish School System and the Recovery School District has fallen from 48th in the state to 61st in the state. So much for that improvement. What we also see is the surrounding school districts. Zachary, Central, Livingston, and Ascension now occupy the top 4 school districts in the state. Over the past 10 years, Central and Zachary school districts increased their enrollment by 3,100 students. However, EBR Parish School System and Baker, they lost a total of 4,500 students. The net result is there are 1,400 fewer students in the East Baton Rouge Parish school system, the public system. Meanwhile, we see Ascension, Livingston, and West Baton Rouge Parish. Their cumulative enrollment has increased by 6,200 students. Middle-income families are voting with their feet, and it's not staying here in East Baton Rouge Parish. Today's presentation will focus on the financial rationale for the city of St. George. We analyzed the trends of the city parish operating budget. We were surprised to learn the operating budget has increased from $529 million in 2003 to $919 million in 2018. That represents a 74% increase in the budget with only an 8% increase in population. Between 2003 and 2015, spending increased every single day over those 13 years by $70,000 per day. And it got worse. Between 2015 and 2018, spending has now increased by $81,000 per day. Over this time period, 8 of 9 departments dramatically increased their annual spending. We were surprised to learn that the Transportation Department is the only budget category that reduced its funding by $8 million a year. In other words, it cut it by 35%, allowing the parish transportation departments to grow. And we benchmarked the operating budgets with every other large metropolitan area in the state. And our findings are disturbing. Between 2009 and 2017, the city parish operating budget increased by $192 million. Over the same time period, the combined operating budget increases of Lake Charles, Lafayette, Alexandria, New Orleans, and Shreveport totaled $154 million. In short, the city parish operating budget increased more than the cumulative total of every city in this state. Our first observation was the uncontrolled increase in pension costs, which have more than doubled from $52 million in 2003 to $107 million in 2018. Despite technology gains in the private sector, the city parish administrations have continued to add staff to their payrolls. So what are the plans of this administration to manage these ever-rising costs and commitments? We don't think the plan exists. As of May 1st, 2007, there were 4,604 city parish employees. One obvious question is, look at that second part. Do we need and can we afford 570 employees plus 100 security guards to staff 14 parish libraries? Why are library services not contracted to the private sector? Why does the Library Control Board require more than twice the number of employees in the Department of Maintenance? And what benchmarking have past and current administrations conducted with best-in-class municipalities in all of these departments? We suggest little to none. Our second observation was the quintupling of the bond debt from $400 million in 2010 to $2 billion by 2016. We understand the federal consent decree requirements of the sanitary sewer overflow project. But why did costs escalate from $869 million to $1.2 billion and is now forecast to cost $1.5 billion? Have these cost overruns ever been explained to the public? If so, we can't find it. And who is accountable for these project cost overruns? Not surprisingly, the annual debt service costs have increased from $40 million in 2003 to $112 million in 2018. And by 2026, will be $125 million. Current bond debt payments will continue until the year 2049. As a direct result of these bonds, all parish residents have experienced a 70% increase in their monthly sewage fees that will continue to escalate every single year. The city parish annual debt service cost of $107 million are greater than the cumulative total of Alexandria, Lake Charles, New Orleans, and Shreveport combined. We were bewildered to find 37 special revenue taxing authorities with a combined 2018 budget of $174 million. These taxing authorities must spend for its designated purpose, and if the spending, even if the spending is inefficient and unwarranted. Since 2003, since we like to talk about taxes, 16 new taxes have been added to EBR parish residents. The practice of dedicated taxing authorities may be attractive to politicians and to the voters, But the unintended consequences are the normalization and the masking of governance inefficiencies and inhibits the elimination of wasteful spending in each and every budget category. I can speak from personal experience. No business protects 37 budget categories with guaranteed annual funds, not subject to the prioritization in the general interest of its overall goals and objectives. Neither should the city parish government. To illustrate false and wasteful spending priorities caused by the special revenue taxing authorities, in 2018, the city parish dedicated $56 million on 14 libraries, while allocated only $15 million to parish transportation projects. Amazingly, since 2003, the annual parish funds dedicated to libraries have tripled, while general funds allocated to transportation projects have been cut by 35%. What other city in America spends nearly 4 times more on libraries than does transportation? I asked the parish government and the area chamber to identify just one such city in this nation. Since 2000, EBR Parish added 1 parish library. Why was it necessary to increase staffing 360 to 570 people, plus 100 security guards? Why was it necessary to tear down the downtown library and spend $15 million to build a structurally unsound facility? And why does the Library Control Board sit on $70 million in reserves, despite their dramatic hiring increases and building extravagances? Benchmarking with other U.S. cities, Louisiana cities, illustrates the magnitude of misappropriation of parish funds. There are 63 libraries in Orleans, Caddo, Lafayette, and Calcasieu parishes, with a combined 2017 budget of $61 million, averaging less than $1 million per library. Unexplainably, in 2018, EBR Parish will increase its spending from $44 million to $56 million on 14 libraries, averaging $4 million per library. Why is it necessary to spend 4 times more on parish libraries than our sister cities, while our transportation infrastructure remains unaddressed? A similar deep dive evaluation should occur in each and every one of the 36 special taxing authorities. We are confident that similar cost improvement opportunities would be identified. In our view, the consolidated city parish governance model is broken. It needlessly wastes taxpayer funds, and it lacks the willingness to benchmark and implement necessary reforms. And to further illustrate the city parish governance model is broken, this Greater Baton Rouge Business Report article referenced in September 2017 the J.P. Morgan study of the financial health of every city, county, parish, and state in the nation. And this headline accurately summarizes the financial health of the city parish. Quote, not a list you want to be on. Baton Rouge ranks in the top 5 over-leveraged U.S. cities. The extent to which the city parish is financially over-leveraged is staggering. 52% of current and future revenues should be dedicated to address its long-term liabilities. J.P. Morgan reports that, quote, while there's no hard and fast rule, municipalities with debt ratios over 30% may eventually face very difficult choices regarding taxation, non-pension spending, infrastructure investment, contributions to unfunded plans, and bond repayment. Sounds pretty familiar, doesn't it? The city parish operating budget only sets aside 28% of its revenues for the long-term debt versus the required 52%, leaving a 24% funding gap as the 5th largest in the nation. And without remedy, in 10 years, the pension funding ratio will deteriorate another 4%. Tragically, Baton Rouge currently has the 3rd highest debt risk indicator with a score of 9 in the entire nation. Quote, the choices outlined in the report for Baton Rouge are stark. Over the next 30 years, the city parish, in a worst-case scenario, will have to either increase taxes by 24%, cut non-pension spending by 20%, or increase worker contributions to the system by 525% in order to meet its obligations. It has been 9 months since this report has been issued. Why have the city parish administration and the business leaders failed to either refute or address these financial concerns? Do they believe that ignoring them will best serve the interests of residents and businesses? We asked the area chamber if they reviewed this report, and their response was, quote, "It was eye-opening for sure." When we asked if they had any published plans to address the looming financial crisis, their response was, quote, "Not from BRAC, I can say." Similarly, we cannot find any published plans from the city parish or any other area business forums to either refute or address these financial concerns of this report. The silence from the city parish administration and the area business leaders is deafening. It is as if this report had never been issued. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act. Of the three choices, it is predictable that past and current city parish administrations have chosen to raise taxes with support, in many cases, from the area chamber. Over the past 2 years, there have been 4 new special revenue tax proposals. 2 passed, most notably the controversial Council on Aging, while 2 were not supported by the Metro Council for placement on the ballot. Of the 4 tax proposals, 3 actually increased spending without addressing the long-term liability funding gaps that I just mentioned. And the city police pension tax proposal, the only one to partially address the long-term underfunded liabilities, never made it to the ballot because city residents expressed their disapproval. And, predictably, the city parish 16-year deprioritization of transportation projects resulted in the 2017 proposed transportation special revenue tax to raise $18 million per year to go secure another $400 million in bond debt. Had the parish reversed its priorities on libraries and transportation, many, if not all, of today's public transportation congestion areas would have been addressed. You can expect additional tax proposals from this administration that will be supported by the area chamber because they are inevitable. So what are the trends in the capital area associated with the community public school district, their tax rates, and their crime rates? Between 2010 and 2015, the population in the cities of Zachary and Central grew between 5 and 10%, while the population in the cities of Baker and Baton Rouge actually shrunk. Meanwhile, the populations in Ascension, Livingston, and West Baton Rouge Parish grew 5 to 8 times greater than the entirety of EDR Parish. Despite the population growth between 2010 and 2015 in the cities of Central and Zachary, EBR Parish lost more than 2,000 residents in the key demographic of school-age children under the age of 18. This decline resulted in recent private school closures and public school consolidations. There were approximately 600 fewer residents between the working ages of 18 and 64. But we did get older. 9,200 residents are over the age of 65, with reduced spending for tax revenue generation. Juxtapose the EBR parish demographic reductions with the population growth in every age category in the surrounding parishes of Ascension and Livingston parishes. Projecting these trends forward into 2025 are disturbing. There will be approximately 4,000 fewer residents under the age of 18, which will translate into 2,800 fewer students, requiring the closure of additional 5 to 6 public and private schools. There will be approximately 1,200 fewer working age residents between the ages of 18 and 64, and more residents over the age of 65. For a while, then mortality rates will rise. Total EBR parish population will be flat, which it has been since 2012, then it will actually decline. In our research, we identified Sandy Springs, Georgia, as the most efficient 21st century governance model for municipalities. Sandy Springs was an unincorporated area of Fulton County, Georgia, and their needs were being ignored by the city of Atlanta. They eventually won their decades-long right to incorporate legislatively, and became a city of 100,000 residents in 2005. An immediate public-private partnership was undertaken with a managing contractor overseeing numerous subcontractors to provide city services to residents. The cost of city services were actually cut in half. And their operating budget surplus allowed the immediate improvement of roads, parks, and other city services. They have no long-term liabilities for city employee pensions. Since 2005, the Sandy Springs governance model has been replicated in numerous Georgia cities. Its operating budget increased for the first time in 13 years in 2018 due to the higher cost of a new city hall. This one-time budget increase was funded from reserves and interest on the bonds that they own and not owe. We will replicate the Sandy Springs governance model efficiencies for the services provided to St. George residents. We will partner with other parish cities to address parish needs, but do so in a cost-effective manner. We will reverse the outward migration of middle-income families and begin to attract new residents. Once incorporated, the governor will appoint a mayor and 5 member council members to govern the city of St. George. When the next election takes place, residents of the city of St. George will vote for a new mayor and all council positions. The council may reapportion itself to add more seats before this election if the public so desires. There will be a total of 4 city employees for 86,000 residents. We'll have a mayor, a chief of police, a treasurer, and a clerk. Attorney services will be contracted, and the managing contractor will privatize the services for the maintenance and upkeep of city streets, bridges, medians, ditches, canals, and other public grounds and facilities. The consolidated parish government will continue to provide these 12 services to St. George residents, just as they do for the cities of Baton Rouge, Baker, Central, and Zachary. All are funded by the property tax revenues and fees already collected by the parish from the city of Baton Rouge, the city of St. George residents. The parish and the state will retain their respective responsibilities to maintain their roads and highways, just as they do in Baker, Baton Rouge, Zachary, and Central. The committee used the 2015 petition data to redraw the St. George boundaries, consistent with the level of petition support to ensure a successful petition campaign. St. George will have approximately 86,000 residents. All businesses and residents who are contiguous with our boundaries are welcome to join the city of St. George after our incorporation, and we've already been contacted with some of the HOA presidents. In the fourth quarter, the committee hired Carr, Riggs, and Ingram to estimate the revenues and operating budget for the city of St. George. Based upon limited 2016 data, CRI projected the city of St. George to have $58 million in annual revenues. Our total budgeted expenses are $34 million before we even consider the public-private partnership efficiencies, leaving a surplus of $24 million to address the near and long-term infrastructure needs of our city. In April 2018, the city parish estimated the revenues of St. George to be $45 million, using a 3-year rolling average of sales tax revenues with a $1.2 million debit to account for the 2016 flood. Even their own inconsistent estimate results in an annual budget surplus of $11 million. However, when we looked at this 2018 city parish operating budget, they did not base their projected revenues on 3-year rolling averages, nor did they take a debit for the 2016 flood that occurred. On the same operating basis, on the same estimating basis, I should say, the St. George surplus grows to $14 million. Under all scenarios, St. George will operate with a budget surplus, and it will be used to utilize and improve our city infrastructure. And when Mayor Bloom speaks against the proposed incorporation for the city of St. George, is she be speaking on behalf of the city of Baton Rouge? Or does her comments reflect the consensus of opinion of every other city in the state, in this parish, as well as the unincorporated area? We think not. It is convenient for the area chamber to oppose the city of St. George, when essentially all of their staff and their executive board live in the Baton Rouge city limits. Their closed-mindedness is symptomatic of their lack of inclusion of any St. George residents on their staff and executive board. The political narratives of the St. George operating budget have been set. The city parish and area chamber have falsely asserted that we must raise taxes with the intent to deter our petition signatures. But the day our petition counts have been certified by the registrar of voters, the city parish, supported by the area chamber, will sue and claim disparate harm to their operating budget. The city of St. George represents 19% of the parish population and will cost-effectively manage less than 5% of the total current city parish budget. Our budget surplus will be used for city infrastructure improvements and additional crime prevention. St. George will retain the existing middle-income families and attract new residents, thereby increasing our property taxes. Our future public education system will compete with Zachary, Central, and the surrounding parishes. The city parish and the area chamber should focus their efforts to better serve all the parish residents by improving the quality and cost of services associated with the remaining 95% of the operating budget, rather than divert parish resources to disenfranchise tens of thousands of St. George voters. They should develop near and long-term solutions to address the financial liabilities outlined in the September 2017 JP Morgan report, with comments and commitments stewarded annually to the public. It is irresponsible to do the same thing over and over again and to expect a different result. It is worth reminding the St. George residents that the city parish and the area chamber opposed the 2005 incorporation of Central. Today, both of these organizations are more than pleased to showcase Central School District performance when courting new businesses and residents to East Baton Rouge Parish. Central has a $40 million surplus on a $10 to $11 million annual budget. Unlike our opposition, we trust the decisions of an informed electorate. Thanks for your time and attention to our presentation this morning.
Thank you, Chris. I'll defer to Chris on all the numbers and technicalities involved in the presentation if you want a chance to review it and go through that. Our challenge from St. George to you is to fact check and source every piece of information you just saw in that presentation. All of it was found at batonrouge.gov or in your own publications. JP Morgan, we didn't make that up. That's the research they did, and we finished in the top 5 in some pretty terrible categories. We're over-leveraged and we're underfunded. Education, we're near the bottom as usual, and frankly, we're just tired of having it. We just want something more for our area. We're unincorporated. I heard somebody this morning say that we want to keep us in the same, they want to keep us in the same city. We've never been in the same city as Baton Rouge. We are unincorporated. Baton Rouge has never wanted us. They have never asked us to be a part of it. What they do like to do is annex businesses. They don't like to annex neighborhoods. How do I know? Because they annexed LaBear's, they annexed the hospital, they annexed Walmart, they annexed a drainage ditch to get there. But they didn't annex any subdivisions or neighborhoods along the way. So what I ask of you is any questions you ask of us today, I want you to ask the city of Baton Rouge the same exact question. And fact check their work. Find out how they got their numbers. And I think you'll be surprised to find out there's a whole lot less basis in their research and their numbers than there is in the presentation you just saw. Any questions? Yes.
So is the school system still a priority? I mean, it was sort of touted as the genesis of this originally. And if so, can you still promise your future constituents that there won't be tax increases related to the creation of a school system?
Okay, so the question is the school system still a priority, and can we promise constituents that we won't raise taxes to build it, correct?
Correct.
Okay, here's what I'm going to tell you. The school system always was the beginning priority. It's how we got started. And then we were told we had to form a city first. And that's exactly what we're doing now. In order to have a school district, you have to form a city. Then you go back to the legislature, you pass a law to create your independent school district. We're a 2 to 3 year window down the road from that process. My question is, why is our area underserved currently by the school system? Why do we not have more than one high school in the southeast Baton Rouge area? Why hasn't anyone ever addressed that issue? So no, I would tell you the intent is never to raise taxes. And when's the last time you went to the ballot and there wasn't a tax measure from Baton Rouge on it? Can you tell me the last times? I don't remember. We have special elections for special taxes in Baton Rouge. Next. Yes, sir.
Help me a little bit, basically. The city of Baton Rouge has some bonds that they owe money. They're obligated on pensions. You just walk away from all of that, up to 20% of the population. You just walk away from all of the commitment, which we have, they're called the foundation of Baton Rouge.
The question is, are we going to walk away from the bond debt that the city and parish of East Baton Rouge has incurred up till now? Is that correct?
Well, and the pension fund.
And the pension fund,
Everything.
all the fund debt they've accumulated.
Everything that they have provided to you, you take advantage of, you just walk away from and start a whole new organization.
Thank you for asking that question. If you'll look on stgeorgelouisiana.com, you'll notice in our budget, there's a $4 million part of our budget that deals with the pension costs that were identified in the previous campaign. We're holding our commitment for the pensions that we owe. Those pensions that for city employees, for example, the city police, which service none of East Baton Rouge Parish in the incorporated area, it is not the obligation of the incorporated area to have those pension costs. So yes, that portion of the parish funds that are associated with activities that we're a part of, we will continue to pay that in our budget. With regard to parish taxes, we're part of the parish just like Central, Baton Rouge, Zachary, Baker. Absolutely. We will pay our share of those bond debts that you saw. Absolutely.
I have a question. It's a two-parter for you. One, the numbers that you went through, how recent are those numbers?
There's a lot of numbers in that slideshow.
Mainly with the sales tax revenue. How recent are those numbers?
So the sales tax revenues were actually taken from what the city put out in April of this year.
I'm not talking about the city of Baton Rouge, I'm talking about for the new city.
Yeah, that's their estimate for the unincorporated area.
Okay.
If you look on the Greater Baton Rouge Business Report, of the article that's there, and in the Advocate, you will find that they estimated the sales tax revenue for our area. In our $48 million revenue stream, that actually uses the numbers that come from the city. However, we modified it to show not a 3-year rolling average, but we did it on the same basis as the forward projection of what the city does for itself. So in other words, those 2016 property taxes that were estimated for our area, we're escalating forward just as they do for us.
Okay, my second part to that is, what do you say to the chamber who said your estimation was $20 million more?
I would argue that the chamber needs to do a little more homework on that. When you source and cite from the chamber the wrong line in the budget, and you start there, you're going to come up a little short. So yeah, I would ask them to do their own independent analysis, as opposed to what they did do, which was take the city of Baton Rouge's revenue numbers and further deduct it, and they couldn't even read the spreadsheet correctly. I'd ask them to do a little more homework before they start publishing accusations. And I'd ask for y'all to fact check their work. That's what I'm asking for. If you ask us a question about that, go back to BRAC and ask them, how did they get that number? How did they derive that number? Well, that's not what that number is. You're missing a 2-cent sales tax. That's over $50 million in additional revenue that they just blew off and pretended like didn't forget. And when they arbitrarily deduct money based on the flood, why'd they do that? How'd they pick that number? They have no idea. Or they do know, and they're intentionally misrepresenting the numbers for whatever reason they need it. I don't know, maybe no one in their group lives in St. George.
What's the current number of cities that you want to
To date, we're well in excess of 10,000.
And overall, what is the update in that process of receiving those signatures? Where are you all in that process?
I continuously working to gather signatures every day. It's a grassroots campaign run by grassroots folks. So we go door to door, knocking on doors. We also have signing locations you can always get at stgeorgelouisiana.com or on our social media page. You can find us just about anywhere. We're more than happy if you go to stgeorgelouisiana.com and sign up. Someone will show up and bring you a petition. So that continues to be the effort, the grassroots effort we continue to do is the same way we started.
What's the next step?
Next step is continue that process until we get well in excess of the signatures necessary.
Who is funding the St. George campaign?
Well, volunteers, the community, our constituents, St. George, people that live in the area. You know, when you're tired of higher taxes, and you're tired of terrible schools, and you're tired of high crime, all of a sudden, magically, money shows up to find a way to do something a little bit better. And that's our goal.
But when you mention high crime, would it be fair to say that the crime in Baton Rouge is more in North Baton Rouge than outside?
I think crime affects everyone, right? I know in my neighborhood alone, we've had 5, 6 break-ins in the past week. I think that affects me pretty seriously. I think it upsets me having people break in my backyard and steal my lawn equipment. I think it's upsetting when people get robbed in my neighborhood. That affects me every single day. So if I got a way to put more boots on the ground and have more deputies out there, by the way, we don't get Baton Rouge City Police Service, for those who weren't aware. We only get the Sheriff's Office, and thank God for them. We get the Baton Rouge Sheriff's Office, they come out there and they take care of us. We'd love to have more of them out there. And if you look at our budget, we budgeted for more of them to get out there.
But if funding and paying is already an issue, how is this going to help?
Funding and paying is not an issue, not in St. George.
But yeah, the St. George doesn't exist anymore. So if it's an issue now, how is St. George, when it does exist, how is that going to help with that? Because let's be honest, when you talk about crime and police pay and having more across the board, across the country, it's low. So how is St. George going to help buck that trend here?
Well, again, we've never had Baton Rouge City Police, so I can't address any issues with the City Police Department. I do know, and I advise you all, check out the Car Rates and Ingram report for our city budget, and look what we did. We budgeted an additional $4 million for the Sheriff's Office that we can use and utilize in a variety of ways, building extra substations, adding more sheriff's deputies to the ground. You know, go back to the library, for example, with their almost 700 employees. That pension cost is borne by the parish, not by the library system. Wouldn't you like to have 100 extra deputies and police officers and 100 less library employees? Wouldn't that help solve a few problems? Maybe.
But St. George will continue to bear those pension costs because that's a parish-wide tax, right?
Not all of those. Library employees, yes.
Right.
City police, no.
But library employees.
But think of the city police department as a good example. We've been paying a portion of that pension cost the entire time, yet we don't get to utilize any of those services. We pay for a lot of things in St. George that we don't get to utilize the services for. We just want to pay our fair share of parish expenses and then be able to make decisions on our own for the things that affect us locally. Yes, sir, I know I saw you back there a couple of times.
In the argument against the unincorporated area becoming incorporated, an argument to eliminate Kenner, City of Plaquemine, Zachary, Baker, isn't that the exact argument, that it should be eliminated? And doesn't the City of Baker, with its education problem, not eliminate the problems of the East Baton Rouge school system and let the legislature see that problem and ask the legislature, why haven't you said, what do we have to do to fix it for those little 8,000 students?
I'm not actually sure what the question is. Do you help me out with that?
Well, in the argument that it shouldn't be incorporated, an argument that therefore you should eliminate other cities that are within parishes.
Honestly, I can't address that. All I can address is what we're doing in the St. George area, which is we feel like better government, better education, lower crime. Yes, sir.
My question, I want to think about it. It pertains really to the decades-old industrial tax exemption program. And when I looked at your map of the area of St. George, I saw very little of it on Mississippi River, where the bulk of, I call that, in a lot of people call that really a giveaway program. So I don't know that St. George and the school systems, would be out of funds the way East Baton Rouge, for instance, is for education by providing oftentimes needless and heretofore almost unquestionable giveaways to industry. Now, my question though is, with regard to the St. George proponents, are they in favor of curtailing that program, or when they come into existence, will they try to do what many of us have been doing, to try to get their schools out of that program altogether, so that y'all can have that money to operate your schools rather than needlessly incentivize industries to come here that have nowhere else to go?
Okay, as far as the ITEP program, which is what you're referring to, St. George has no position on the ITEP program. It's not something we've been faced with because we're not in that area. Even if we were, Baton Rouge annexed all the major revenue locations in the St. George area for tax dollar purposes. So that's more of an issue for Baton Rouge city government, not really for St. George. But what I will tell you is how attractive it is for business when they can live near a city center, they can have a high quality education, low crime, and good roads. Isn't that going to make it better to attract business? Would you have to offer a little less maybe if you had a better place for them to go? Would we get Albemarle and Raising Cane's and Smoothie King back to Louisiana where they belong and not have them wander off to another state? It'd be nice to do that. And I think St. George is the first step in East Baton Rouge Parish getting back to good business.
You used the example of Sandy Springs as the model that you guys want to focus on for St. George. How realistic is that for an area outside of a major metropolitan city where the population continues to grow and you can see something like that be successful? Is that you?
Oh, that's great. We can go to Livingston and Ascension right next door to us and see the exact same thing. Thriving, growing, great education, lower crime, and they're right next door. I didn't have to go to Georgia to get it. I can look next parish because all of our residents keep leaving to go there. So I can stay, I'd like to keep us all at home. I'd like to stay here and be able to emulate and do the same things that make good parish government. If you can have minimal employees, minimal pension costs, you can rededicate that wasted funding into things that make sense, roads, education, and more police officers. Yes, sir.
From the last incorporation effort, can you comment on the level of integrity that you think there was right down to the wire? I know it came down to just a few signatures here or there, and if it should come down to that close of a margin again, do you have officials prepared to ensure the integrity if it were to come down as close as it was before?
I would hope so. I can't address the last time, but I can tell you I would hope that we could have the integrity of our government officials to allow the people of St. George to have the right to vote. First and foremost, this isn't about whether or not we're going to form a city. The first part is about whether or not we're going to get on the ballot to have the option to vote. And that would be what I would hope, that everyone would understand that we have a due process, we have a right to vote. It's a fundamental right that we enjoy. And if we get enough signatures to get on that ballot, we should enjoy that right to vote, not be tied up in needless litigation. If the mayor's office has said our city's going to have enough, the revenue that she claims we're going to have, which we dispute, and we still argue we're going to operate at a surplus, then why, if we're successful in getting the votes, would she challenge us in court and waste more taxpayer dollars that could be used to fight crime in the parish, fight blight, for example? So I would hope we'd have enough integrity in our city and our parish officials that they would allow us, if we get the signatures, to go on the ballot and decide our rights.
Thank you.
What kind of relationship would you anticipate between any new city and the contractors that provide city services? What would be the expectation of them? What might that contract look like? And have you considered any specific companies that might be able to fulfill that role?
No, we would never, I can't imagine we'd ever consider any specific companies prior to the incorporation of the city, because that would be premature at best. I think when you look at city and parish services, we continue to participate, as the slideshow shows, in a bunch of parish services. And we continue to pay our fair share. We would continue to do that. For services where we had an option and a choice, we would utilize best business practices and go and find the most qualified contractor that does the best job at the most affordable price. That's what good stewards of tax dollars should be doing.
And their role would be what? Would it be mostly like maintenance work or administrative? Or?
All of the above. Initially, we would only have the positions that are constitutionally mandated for the city. Yes.
Just to answer your question, we did visit with Junior Shelton in Central. As you know, in 2005, it was incorporated. They have a contract firm that's already in place. It's doing all of these services. So in large measure, it would be representative of what Central is doing. So we actually have a working model inside this parish that we can build on.
Somebody, go ahead.
To go back to another question, you mentioned that if you guys have 10,000 signatures, what is the benchmark?
Well, if you look, what we're required to have is almost 13,000. Yes, sir.
Using Sandy Springs as a model, I lived in Atlanta for 17 years and I was there when Sandy Springs was born. Sandy Springs doesn't have that much potential for geographic growth, but your proposal does. So if it expands, the population expands, what's to prevent this from happening again? If 20% of your residents say, we don't like the job you guys are doing.
Well, the great part of that question is, there's a very easy answer, it's vote. We're not incorporated, we're unincorporated. Baton Rouge doesn't want us. Baton Rouge never wanted us. So we incorporate, we'll be the city of St. George. If residents at that point feel the need to make a change, feel the need to elect new officials, feel the need to go in a different direction, we're going to be small enough of a geographic area and population-wise, they'll be able to vote. They'll be able to vote for their decision-making. They'll have a local hand in their own school district. That's a novel idea, to have a hand in your own community schools. And they'll have the ability to do that with their vote. Yes, sir.
The proposed budget, how does it compare to other cities in Louisiana to the order of 100,000 people? I mean, to be honest, it smells and tastes low, what you're proposing as a budget.
Now let me ask you a
Have
question.
you done a benchmark of your proposed budget versus other cities?
Two parts to that. One, Chris's favorite word is benchmark.
Well, I am too.
And I would ask, why do you think it smells low? That's an arbitrary comment with no background information.
Well,
With
let's
so
go
why?
back. You said 5% of the budget for 20% of the people.
What
How
I-
many people in this room would think that smells low?
So the question is, how can 19% of the people get by with 5%?
How does it know?
And the
The
answer,
question was, that was not the question. What is the benchmark of that versus other cities of a population of 100,000 in Louisiana?
let me refer you to our stgeorgelouisiana.com website. CRI actually did that benchmark for us and listed the cities where it was normalized for the services that we are providing, and is in the median for that. And that actual report is there for the media to look at. You can see on a par basis, that comparison is there. But the other part that I would remind you, if you remember the slide that talked about the other city services that are being provided through the city parish government, such as the 19th JDC, such as animal control, such as library services, all of those other, such as EMS, St. George Fire Department, East Baton Rouge Fire Department, City Fire Department, all of those are already funded. So what we're looking at is the maintenance of our city streets, canals, highways, as I mentioned in my presentation. So when you normalize it, and you want to look at the actual benchmarking, we ask CRI to do that for that very reason. Those cities are actually enumerated there if you care to take it.
Last question. I'll take it. So just a follow-up on my first question, when can people who expect to see a school budget, because you guys have done one for the city, and in the way that you guys have sort of guaranteed people that there won't be a city tax increase, can you guarantee then that there wouldn't be a school tax increase? And I ask this question because the example that you use a lot is the city of Central, where they do have a city surplus, but they did have to raise taxes on the school side.
All right, what I would say for the school system again is, it's a 2 to 3 year process from the date we incorporate. So not just get on the ballot, we vote and approve the city of St. George, we have to go back to legislature, get approved for the school district. At that point, we start looking at the dollars per student that will be allotted for our area, and we start planning and building and funding for there. And my question again is, why has Baton Rouge underserved our area for so long that we only have one high school in the area? Why did we get to that point?
So is that your way of saying that it's possible that taxes will have to be raised
Let me
to?
answer it this way, Rebecca. In the article that put out for the area chamber, I would ask you to go back to the area chamber And why did they leave out the 2-cent sales tax associated, which is the largest revenue stream for schools? You'll notice in that evaluation, they talked about MFP, they talked about property taxes, and when you look at the sales tax, that's a $50 million bust. My question to the area chamber is, did they not know that? Or did they intentionally leave the public with forethought to leave that out of their calculations? So I'd ask you to go back and ask the area chamber that question. Because when we looked at it, the 4 sources of revenue, the MFP, the sales tax dollars, the property taxes, and the federal dollars, we will have more than enough